Coming up next is a favorite segment of many households, and that's called Who's Who. This popular segment will be hosted by a popular gentleman in our community, and his name is none other than Mr. Sonny Siegel. Mr. Siegel is the CIO of Montgomery County, Maryland. This week, Mr. Siegel has alongside him Senator Brian Frosh, a candidate for Attorney General of Maryland. Let's hear these two gentlemen in their dialogue.
Welcome to the Who's Who show. I'm your host, Sonny Siegel. Today, my guest is Mr. Brian Frosh. Mr. Frosh is candidate for the position of Attorney General of Maryland. Welcome, Brian, to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I want to remind our viewers that your appearance on our show is very significant in that as Attorney General of Maryland, you will of course be the highest level prosecutor in the state of Maryland. And many of our viewers are residents of the state of Maryland. And what happens in the state of Maryland, of course, then affects what happens in the entire region and even the country, because of course we're in the capital region here. So with that said, I have to acknowledge your wonderful background and to say that your candidacy surely will be successful, a hugely successful candidacy on November 7th at election time.
I hope you're right.
And that's a prediction I'm making.
Right.
So in the period from 1986, you've been a legislator, you've been in the state senate, you've chaired committees there, you've passed some very strict but very pertinent laws, and we'll want to hear from you about those.
Okay.
And then your candidacy has been endorsed by some very high-level people and entire organizations that matter. So we would want to hear about that as well.
Okay, that sounds good.
You are, I see, actually a Montgomery County Bethesda resident
there.
of long standing.
Yes.
And then you have your law schooling in wonderful and well-known institutions such as the Columbia School of Law, of course.
Correct.
So, Brian, can you tell us why you are running for the position of Attorney General of Maryland?
Yep. Sonny, I've been all over the state for the past year and a half, listening to people, and what I hear from them is that pretty much the same. Whether they live in Montgomery County or Western Maryland or the Eastern Shore, they want to feel safe in their neighborhoods. They want clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, and they want equal opportunity. They want financial security, a shot at the American dream for themselves. They want a great education for their kids. And these are things that I've been fighting for my entire time, 28 years in the General Assembly, and with pretty good success. So I think I can have an even greater impact on those issues as Attorney General than I've had in the State Senate and in the House of Delegates.
I see, and all the things you mentioned are very, of course, close to our hearts, you know, and we care about them a lot as people who work here, who educate our children here, you know, and should we say age here, you know.
Yes.
Now, gun violence has been a hot topic in Maryland, as it has been nationally. So, as Attorney General of Maryland, how will you address that issue?
Well, that's been a passion of mine since I was first elected to the House of Delegates. I've worked hard to stem gun violence, and we had great success in 2013. I was the Senate champion of legislation that Governor O'Malley was pushing hard. We adopted what I think are common sense measures that don't impair anybody's Second Amendment rights, but will make Marylanders safer and will save lives throughout our state. as Attorney General, it'll be my job to enforce those laws, stop gun trafficking, and also to defend the law that we've passed from the NRA. The NRA has challenged the law in court. They lost the first round. It's likely going to go up, probably even to the Supreme Court. And I look forward as Attorney General to enforcing the law and to defending it in court.
I see. And all that while preserving Second Amendment rights.
That's right. I mean, what we've done is we've adopted measures that'll keep guns out of the hands of criminals, period. If you're a law-abiding citizen in Maryland, you can get a gun. But we have now fingerprint licensing. You want to buy a handgun? We have adopted a law that's very similar to what's in effect in New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut. And we know that in those states, there are lower rates of gun violence than there are in their neighboring jurisdictions and demographically similar jurisdictions because of those requirements. So
I see.
we can keep guns out of the hands of criminals.
Yes, yes. This is very important, of course, to the safety and well-being of
Absolutely.
our entire social fabric.
Yeah.
And then in what other ways will your position as Attorney General protect our seniors, children, and families?
Well, you know, again, in the General Assembly, I was the sponsor of legislation to protect victims of domestic violence. We passed legislation in 2014 that puts Maryland in the same posture as all of the other states in the United States. We had a standard that was very difficult for victims to prove in order to get protection from our courts. And we made it easier for victims to get protection, and it's extremely important. But most of the victims are women, and you know, we've seen shocking videos recently.
Unfortunately, yes.
And it brings to life for many people, I think, the issue of how important it is to protect victims of domestic violence. There are folks who live with it every day. And as Attorney General, as a legislator, I fought for that. As Attorney General, I'll continue to enforce the laws that help protect victims from domestic violence, and to advocate ways in which we can address that problem both before it occurs and afterwards.
I see. So there is a lot of, in other words, in the enforcement of it, there is still room for gains.
Well, there
in other words, the law is on the books.
Yes, the law that we passed this year really puts us in a much better spot than we've been in for many, many years. But it's important that the public understand what domestic violence is, and that's why, you know, the video that came out about the violence in the Baltimore Ravens. I'm hesitant to mention his name, but
yes,
everybody knows it. It's Ray Rice.
Right.
You know, that video, I think, brought home to many Americans how awful domestic violence can be. And it's not just a spat between a husband and a wife many times. It leads to beatings and death and permanent injuries, and it's traumatic for not only the victim, but also for the kids in the house. And kids are subject to domestic violence.
And kids are our future, of course, we'll agree. And so now to hate crimes. It turns out that our audience and our communities are very diverse. And so can you say how your role as Attorney General can help Maryland, bring down hate crimes and the inequality issues even lower than they are today?
Yeah, Sonny, this is, I like to remind people, in the United States, almost every single one of us is the child of immigrants. My grandparents were immigrants. That's the strength of our country. It's diversity. The folks who have come here from other places are entrepreneurs in many cases. In most cases, it takes a lot of guts to pick up and leave a culture that you're familiar with, leave your family behind sometimes, and move to a new place. And the United States has historically been the land of opportunity, and that's why so many people want to come. You see it generation after generation. It's difficult at first to gain acceptance. There are prejudices, and we see it manifesting itself over and over again. But the great thing about America is that we have been able to blend all these different cultures and religions, and it's a constant struggle. Mm-hmm. We have taken action since I've been in the General Assembly against racial and ethnic profiling. We have passed laws that prohibit discrimination in housing, employment, and in public accommodations. So we've got many of the tools in place, but it's still a learning process for all of us. And as Attorney General, the key thing that I think our Attorney General has to be focused on is justice. And this is simply a matter of justice.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, this is very important to many and all of our viewers. We are, after all, I'm first generation immigrant, and now of course our children, but our entire communities are full of folks from all over the world. And then the consumer interest, how to protect those against the profit interest of the certain sectors, of course.
Right. This is a key role for the Attorney General. The Attorney General is the people's lawyer, and here protecting consumers is specifically within the Attorney General's responsibilities. And I've sponsored legislation that outlaws identity theft in Maryland and that protects people from cheats and frauds and scams.
Particularly our elderly, our young people as well.
And the legislation that helped our foreclosure process be fairer to homeowners. Mm-hmm. And as Attorney General, it's the responsibility of the office to protect folks from the kinds of credit card scams that you see from time to time, from the telephone rip-off artists who call up our vulnerable citizens mm-hmm. and either cheat them out of their property or that persuade them to do something maybe legal but not in their interest.
Are you able to say, just in very few words, in the interest of time, to our audience, how Asian Americans can be key to your success as Attorney General?
Well, I'm very proud that I serve with Delegate Susan Lee. She's the first Asian American woman to serve in the House of Delegates. She's running for my seat in the state Senate. She and I have worked closely together for the past decade, mm-hmm. and I also served as president of the Maryland India Business Roundtable.
And do you work with Delegate Aruna Miller, Kumar Barbe, and others? Yeah, yes. So you do have Asian American interests at heart.
These are my friends and my colleagues, and I enjoy working with them.
I feel confident that your background, your experience, your dedication to the state of Maryland will help you succeed. I look forward to your role as Attorney General. It's been great to have you on the show today and hope to have you back again in the near future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I've enjoyed it a lot.
This is your host, Sonny Siegel, signing off from the Who's Who show on the Capitol Forum. I look forward to seeing you next month at the same place and the same time.